kind of my coincidental privilege to introduce another Andrew. Andrew Field has become a good friend. He is leading a global effort to harmonize investment crowdfunding around the world. He leads the organization known as the Global Equity Crowdfunding Alliance. And he is really a great human being and a deep thinker in this space, and a really impactful leader as this coalition is gelling globally to sort of harmonize, coordinate, and conduct cross-border transactions. It'll be interesting to see if some of this relates to the digital conversation we were just having. But Andrew, let me pop you onto the screen, and I'll turn the time over to you to introduce the great people that'll be on your panel with you.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you for those kind words. That's really kind. And hello, everybody, and welcome to this session on Crowdfunding Without Borders, Unlocking Global Opportunities. I'm Andy Field. I'm from DaxiChain and from the Global Equity Crowdfunding Alliance, as Devin has mentioned. I'm going to be your moderator today. And as steering committee lead at Gecko, I'm seeing more and more every day that around the world, entrepreneurs, investors are getting increasingly connected, which is great because that kind of sums up our vision. But the journey to truly borderless crowdfunding, we think still has many challenges as well as opportunities. And today, what we're going to try and do is explore how platforms, technology, regulation, and community capital can help break down some of those borders. And I've got four incredible panelists on your screen right now who can bring deep expertise from across the globe. And I'd like to introduce them to you. We've got Patrice Gayton. Hi, Patrice. Patrice is Business Development Leader and Operations Manager at ISPD in Haiti. Patrice has decades of experience in grassroots investment and economic development. I will also joined by Meseret Warner, or Meze, as I believe you like to be called, Meze. Founder and Managing Director of Ignite Investment, Ethiopia's first equity crowdfunding platform that's dedicated to connecting entrepreneurs, especially women, with investors worldwide. We've got Konstantin Boyko. Konstantin is a fintech entrepreneur, CEO and co-founder of LenderKit, and a global voice in building compliant crowdfunding infrastructure. He actually sits on the steering committee of Gecko as well, which is fantastic. And Cameron Neal is joining us at a ridiculous time, I think, Cameron. It's probably something like 2 a.m. where you are now in Australia. Cameron is co-founder of Lend for Good, mobilizing community capital for impact ventures across the globe. Now, we've only got around 35 minutes to talk here, and there's a lot to talk about. So if I could ask all of our panelists just to be as succinct as possible when sharing views, but we're going to jump straight in. And I think we can start by sort of grounding ourselves in the bigger picture. So I'd like each of you actually, just to take a minute or so, just to share your perspective on this sort of overarching question, which is, what does borderless crowdfunding mean to you? And why does it matter for entrepreneurs and investors today? And I think, if it's okay, Patrice, I'd like to start with you on that one.
Thanks, Andy. What we're seeing within the Caribbean market, I think one of the biggest untapped opportunities is the possibility of linking the diaspora with the US and Europe sector with the crowdfunding crowd. And we have there's many Caribbeans living in those countries, and they want to help. They want to sponsor good projects within the Caribbean environment. And I think that's what with an easing of international regulations, and I think platforms that can provide different type of devices and concepts would definitely improve that sector.
That makes sense. Great, and we'll come on to some more regional differences shortly, actually. So, Meze, could you just have your take on that, please? Well, we can't hear you, Meze. If you could just.
Sorry, I muted
That's perfect.
myself.
That's perfect. We can hear you now.
Yeah. For me, from our experience at least, is that, a lot of the African diaspora live all over the world, but mostly in the US and in the EU zone. And the regulation and just fragmented the regulations of every single country has been the biggest challenge. So when we talk about borderless, crowdfunding for me would be a seamless, a virtual border kind of capital movement would make really a huge difference in Africa, because billions of dollars come into the continent as remittances. And then as soon as it switches into investment, it just creates a ton of bottlenecks. So to me is really making a seamless capital flows, between countries globally would be amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Konstantin, your perspective, please.
Well, first of all, I stay on technology side, and technology is sort of global. So that's one angle. Another one, I think I represent a living example of a person who deals with cross-border things every day, because I live in one country, I have passport from another country, and my company is registered in the third country. So I have to do a lot of things, and I can do those things digitally without any not easily, but manageable. So why investment crowdfunding should be so difficult when it comes to cross-border transactions? I guess that's my perspective, and of course I would like to see it easier done. Of course, not every project is supposed to be global or cross-border. It can be very much local, and if we talk about impact projects, they are usually local. But on the other hand, there are diasporas, and there are people who might want to invest in those local projects. So let's try to make it easier.
Thank you. And Cameron, what does borderless crowdfunding mean to you, and why does it matter for the entrepreneurs and investors?
Just to pick up on Konstantin's point, it's communities being able to pool their capital to back impact enterprises to create the kind of world that we all want to be part of, whether that's local or not. It's a shared planet, and no matter where we are as investors or entrepreneurs, we need to be able to connect. The challenges that our communities face don't really care about borders and nation states, to be honest, like climate change. Like that's not something that has that a border can play any role with, right? And so we really need to be able to mobilize capital of all kinds, financial, human, social, knowledge capital, to solve these things. And that it needs to be able to go to where people are acting and where people want to see that action taken. And that's, for me, what everyone said, we need things to move at a pace that can make change happen. And
sure,
the borders get in the way.
No, I actually couldn't agree more. I think actually it's pretty much common sense. Everything that's been said there is pretty much common sense. And thanks for that. I mean, already we're kind of hearing common themes around collaboration, around trust, inclusion, opportunity. So let's actually move on to some of those more regional perspectives. Just so in Europe, we've seen the introduction of ECSPR in recent years, and that's a harmonised framework designed in part to make cross-border collaboration simpler across the EU member states. So, and the intention there, it's been clear, it's been positive, but the reality is that the implementation of that has taken longer, and it's proved a bit more challenging than many expected, actually. As a result, the benefits have been a bit slower to materialise, and the framework is still in the process of kind of kicking in to deliver its full positive impact in terms of sort of helping to break down the borders. So, again, I'm going to come back to Patrice on this one. Patrice, you've worked extensively in the Caribbean, obviously. What unique opportunities or untapped potential do you see for cross-border crowdfunding in that particular region?
Well, following up on what you were saying, Andy, I mean, and based on what the Caribbean dynamics, I'm seeing what you're seeing is there's different groups that are setting up themselves. Like, for example, the Eastern Caribbean crowdfunding framework, and it's a batching of 10 small countries in the island, and they're coming up with regulatory framework that's politically aligned with EU regulations and US regulations.
Okay. Yep.
And also, I look at there's a good one that's coming up that's real helping hands, and it started during COVID. It offers their particularity is like you have 90% of the donations. You can keep the 90% of the donations, and you don't need US banking, or there's a lot of vetting that they don't need. So if they can grow if they can promote this, I think it offers a lot of advantage for different crowdfunding platform within the region.
Okay, that's really interesting. So there are some efforts already in the Caribbean to sort of, even on a regionalized basis, to sort of harmonize the regulatory framework, which is really interesting. Meze, if we could,
one also.
Yeah, sure, Patrice. Yeah.
It's a woman-led network. It's called Fundrise Her. Okay, and their goal is to raise $1 million over 10 countries and spread it out to 50 women entrepreneurs. So it's more direct. It's a project-led, and so it's interesting to see as well. And
that is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and during our earthquake also, 2010, there was this program that was supported by a microfinance institution in Haiti. It was Foncoze, and they had a crowdfunding platform in order to promote those little projects. It's not there now, but it's an idea of what can be done.
Oh, it's a great example. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So, and Meze, if I could just come to you, Ignite Investment is connecting African entrepreneurs with investors abroad. What have you learned about bridging that sort of geographic and often also cultural gap?
It has been like I said, I think regulation is the biggest hurdle. So, crowdfunding, a lot of people can claim that they are raising funds for this cause, that cause on the internet. So creating trust is the biggest thing. You can talk to any diaspora. So the number three concern they have is trust. So when it is remittances, it is very easy, right? It's going to your moms and dads or friends and stuff. It's consumable. You don't care coming back and things like that. So it's no big deal. But as soon as you say it's investment, they want to know where is it going, who is it going, how is the company performing. All a number of questions, even if it's like $100, right? Even though we say we are compiling that. So for us, it has been creating a huge partnership. And then we said that we're going to focus in one region in the US because there is a big Ethiopian and African diaspora where they are sending billions of dollars as remittances. And also that we know we have data that shows that a lot of the diaspora does actually invest a lot as long as they get structured, dependable, transparent kind of investment. So for us is like, okay, well, how do we create that trust? And it has been complying. We can say, okay, we're regulated in the US, your money is safe, that they can see, they can touch. We also create a system where they can be directly linked into the fundraisers on our platform so they can see it transparently. And also, the context that we can say what they are solving, the biggest challenges on the continent being solved, as well as being also regulated locally. So it is kind of being compliant in multiple jurisdictions that gives them, the confidence that we are not just collecting money and disappearing. So that's really, really important. But also even others who want to jump in when they see the diaspora, we try to create blended financing that would encourage them to come in. So it is a multi-pronged approach that we're doing, but compliance and regulation is one of the very biggest trust building factor, but as well as finding fundraisers that are dependable, that you can say they are not going to take your money and disappear, so that they can see the money working. And even if it's a very small fraction of the money they are sending, that if they can get it back, they can reinvest it, they can see their impact they are looking at, and things like that. So all those factors are really, really important. And also, the investability of the fundraisers, as well as, many, many factors. But these three things are key in order to make cross-border investing work. One thing I think Patrice, hearing him is really amazing, especially as a person who cares about like women empowerment, mentioning what they are doing. It's really encouraging.
Sure.
Because I think one of the very discouraging part of struggling with crowdfunding in Africa has been we are very few. There are a ton of crowdfunding platforms in Africa, but they all tend to be grant based, like GoFundMe, African version. So we really do not have any kind of harmonized effort to make that happen. There has been the African Diaspora Crowdfunding Association, but there hasn't been a lot of progress. So we are very, very few in the continent, and also the countries have a very, very few countries have a very well thought out crowdfunding framework. At least in Ethiopia, where I am, we are implementing a capital market where they are experimenting on sandbox, where crowdfunding can be part of that experimentation. So it's very infant stage, I would say. It's advantage, but it's also a huge disadvantage to be, not having that as well. But it's coming
Sure.
slowly.
Well, look, I mean, it's I knew for a fact that you would talk about trust, and it's something we're going to come on to shortly. But it's fascinating how both of you actually, when answering that, both of your experiences highlight not just the capital, but the sort of human connection that cross-border models can create. So I'd like to just move on now, if that's okay, to talk a little bit more about the technological aspects and compliance aspects. And this is a question for Konstantin. Konstantin, you built crowdfunding software for platforms across multiple continents. And so from a technology and compliance perspective, what's the biggest challenge when operating across borders?
Yeah, well, on this question alone, I could probably take all the time we have, but I'll try to be short. So you can't imagine actually how many people come to us with an idea of a crowdfunding platform, and very few of them actually progress to launching the platform. And one of the reasons why they can't do it is they come before they figure out the regulation, and then once they understand how things work from regulation standpoint, they understand, okay, this is not so easy as we thought. Just build technology, launch a platform, and you're there. Regulation part takes a lot of challenges, and also many of leads we have, they come with an idea of cross-border transactions and working, because everyone thinks, okay, well, if you want to launch a platform, why limit it with one country? We can go to other markets, to other regions, raised from anywhere. And then they find out that they should be compliant not with just one regulation, but with regulations from very different parts, different countries. And like Mr. mentioned, it comes down to getting licensed or being regulated in multiple jurisdictions. This is not easy, even in one location, but in multiple, that's very difficult. But if we talk about technology, then from regulation, and there are a lot of implications to technology, and that includes payment providers. And this is probably one of the biggest pain points because there is no universal like crowdfunding payment solution all over the globe. If we go to Europe, then there are players which work only on European market. If you go to US, there are a lot of them, well, not a lot, but a few of them, but they also work only on the US market. So especially when there is an idea of cross-border things, this is the most painful thing, to find a reasonable payment solution. The same goes to KYC or identity verification, because many things are also local and localized for a certain country. It's easy to do within one country, but then when you add to the mix other investors from abroad, becomes very complicated. And even, Andy, you mentioned the CSPR, which is supposed to enable cross-border and kind of pan-European crowdfunding in Europe. But in reality, even finding a payment provider which will work in all European countries is not an easy task.
Difficult, yeah.
And we found it out very recently with one of the customers. They've signed one of the big names on the market, and then 6 months later, they understood that they can't work in a specific European country within the European Union, just because they don't have necessary authorization or necessary procedures which are required in this country by central bank. So basically, the framework is unified, but the implementation and the rules and the laws are very different in local countries and member states in the European Union. So unfortunately, even there are a lot of challenges, and they impact technology as well.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I suspected you'd say that. And I was going to ask a question. I've decided not to ask it, but I'll tell you what it is because I don't think we've got time to answer it. It's so complex. But the fact is that regulatory environments do vary dramatically. And my question was going to be, how do we sort of overcome this patchwork so that cross-border crowdfunding can grow? But I don't think we can answer that. Such is the nature of the question. I don't think we've got time to answer it in this session. So I think that's probably one for another day, and certainly one that Gecko will be trying to solve. But one thing is for sure is that clearly regulation, it can either be a barrier or it can be a competitive advantage depending on how it's approached. And I guess that's kind of a perfect segue to the role of social impact and community capital. And this is where I'd like to come to you, Cameron, if that's okay. So Cameron, your work focuses on mobilizing community capital for impact ventures. How do you think global crowdfunding models can stay value driven while scaling internationally?
I think it's what Messe was saying before, right? Like the whole secret sauce to all this working is trust and trust chains. And if you break that trust, you begin to not do what's on the tin, what's on the box that you're promising, like you don't have a platform. You need to be able to build trust and maintain trust from investors and entrepreneurs and connecting them up. These entrepreneurs are, often working in very challenging environments. Investors need to not only be able to trust us to get the money to them and to get the money back, but they also need to trust that those entrepreneurs are going to deliver the impact that they say they're going to deliver. Yeah. So, it's an interesting dynamic, I think, when and we've been touching on it with all the conversations so far about how you balance efficiency that you need for scale, which comes with technology, but fuse that with the really human touch points and elements that kind of build trust and relationship and that give people a strong sense of who I'm connecting with, what I'm connecting with, how I experience them, how I trust, how I see my money being put to work. And so I think it's an interesting thing that we have to grapple with, which is we have these technologies that can enable us to do stuff all over the place efficiently, but you tend to, as you pursue those models, almost astroturf everything and make everything look homogeneous. And that's not the world. Like in our experience, what's actually super interesting is the nuance of each particular place and community where stuff is happening. And how you get that balance right, I don't think we've got it right all the time, but how you get that balance right between that kind of nuance and deep storytelling and human element of understanding what's happening, particularly with the SME sector that we work with, they're highly susceptible to shocks, both personal and, and global and context specific, that very often means that investment is not a straight line in terms of what you said was going to happen is what happens. So how do you maintain trust in that context? Well, you need to be able to be transparent and provide information about what's happened, what's gone on for you, and explain that to people. And what we've seen with our model is that if you take your investors on that journey and you provide that really human connection and insight, like those investors are learning too. They're learning about, I had no idea that's what was happening on the ground in Kenya. Like, that's really interesting. I'm going to go and do some more research. What other things can I do to help you, right? And so you kind of, people want it to be easy and they want it to kind of be efficient. But I think there's also a part of us that, we're human and we like some of that messiness of like, human connection and interaction, which is real. I don't think we all want just AI agents talking to each other, investing our money, and like not having any humans in the chain. As efficient as that would be, I don't think that's what will build trust and those trust chains that makes this work. That's my perspective.
I think I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what you're saying as well is that the storytelling element is obviously key in building that trust. I'd open it up to everybody else actually. And does anybody else have any sort of examples of trust building measures that work best for convincing an investor in one part of the world to put their money into a venture that's located thousands of miles away?
I have a thought which I can share.
Sure, Konstantin. Yeah.
So basically, I would compare it to e-commerce, because what makes people trust all those marketplaces where you buy some products on the other part of the world and then get them shipped to you, and so you believe that those products will actually arrive and they will be delivered. In my mind, this trust is about brand awareness. So first of all, you have to trust the brand, like Amazon, for example, or some marketplace where you buy it, and then you check the seller, and then there is sort of reputation and other things. And what's also more important, that this thing works for others. So there are success stories of people buying those products and getting those products. So to apply this analogy to crowdfunding, I think there should be trust to a platform, so that the platform is trustworthy, and that may be achieved with success stories, with regulation, because it's harder to do wrong things when you're regulated. And then, of course, the story of a certain company which is raising funds. So this is a combination of two things. And then the third thing is the global awareness of crowdfunding itself, because if people know that it works, then there is more trust to it. And as we know, there's still work to be done on this awareness, at least global awareness.
If I can add to what I was saying,
yeah.
what the key way that we make this kind of trust thing work with our global crowdfunding is that we work through intermediaries. So a borrower cannot list on our platform. It has to be listed by an entrepreneur support organization, a venture studio, an accelerator incubator, etc., that works with that client, that works with that enterprise. And effectively, that intermediary is staking their reputation that the borrower is going to execute. So what you have is someone representing to you that they know these people, they've met these people, we're going to work with them, we're going to support them. We've done the due diligence, we've done human due diligence, we've done financial due diligence. We believe they're going to succeed, and you can see our track record as intermediaries bringing things to the platform, right? So you don't have, who is this borrower? We've never heard of them before. Yeah. You have these other actors in the chain that you begin to build a trust score around to go, well, they've done 30 before and 25 of them have worked. So for us,
there's a track record, right? Yeah.
There's a track record. But what investors value is that those intermediaries have deep knowledge of particular geographies. They might specialize in women-led enterprises in Indonesia, and so you can go, well, they know women-led enterprises in Indonesia. That's their specialty. And so if they're getting out of their lane and they're trying to talk about a borrower that's, a male business from Rwanda, they're like, well, who are you to know that, right? So I think it is about like building chains of trust. And for us, it is really about trying to accumulate that trust at a level of intermediary actors whose job it is to support the growth of these businesses, right? And so by bringing them into the chain rather than, they are intermediating between investors and borrowers to kind of provide a trust mark. And so that's one of the ways that we get around that. And to what I was saying before, they bring the local nuance. They can bring a context of, we know East Africa. That's where we work. And so we understand context, and we know why this loan will work where others won't, because this is our context, right? And so you do get more of the nuance, you get more of the granularity, more of the reality of the world not being a homogeneous place when you have intermediaries that can be specialists and experts in
Absolutely.
particularly geographies or particular industries.
Yeah, that's
just
an interesting
to add,
approach.
if I can add a little bit to
Sure.
what Neil was saying, is that for us also, we added different elements to create that kind of trust, and also just getting awareness to it. Is one, we work with a well-known bank in the country, in Ethiopia, and then we created and we had a partnership and we had MOU. So now we have a custodial services. So we tell them that it's money does not really come to us, so it's directly transferring. Investors do send their money, but it goes to a bank, whether it's a successful fundraising. If not successful, there is someone who's taking care of that whole securities movement. It's not only the money that gets as a custodial services, but also in share management, in how they're going to get their exits later on. But especially in Africa, one of the biggest concerns that we hear from the investor side is, how do I get my money back? How do I know all these things happen? So we created that whole ecosystem of partnerships, like as I mentioned, but also in the US side of it, we have SPV creator partners and others even. So that creates a lot of trust, because we do partner with well-known institutions.
Yeah.
That gives them confidence. On top of that, we created an accelerator on the side as a different consulting service, where we work with the fundraisers, because in Africa, making also investable companies is a challenge. So we do that, and what we create a community is we invite potential investors to be in the demo day. They can be virtually connected. So we had quite a few of them actually who participated demo day and say, can I see the pitch deck of this company that was in this accelerator program, and things like that. So they feel connected. They were part of the process in vetting companies and things like that. So all those kinds of layers create additional trust factor, that it's not only trust factor for them, it kind of builds that community, that involvement, that impact, that it just brings a whole dimension to the crowdfunding investment.
Yeah, so adding to that building of trust, working with established partners, establishing credibility, and also again going back to something that Cameron said earlier, we're talking about being very transparent, and I think that they all contribute to that. I'd just like to move on quickly. We're running out of time, so I just want to kind of make this real for the audience. Really, I'm just wondering if any of you have an example where cross-border participation has either contributed to or transformed actually a venture or an ecosystem.
So I will just jump on that because I think the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is well known in the world. I think even we hear it in politics, like the Egypt-Ethiopian conflict and other things. That's a huge Ethiopian multi-billion project. Even though it wasn't through the technology of crowdfunding, but the government was so smart to involve a lot of the diaspora in just crowdsourcing the whole thing. So it became like a community built, a really big project in the country, but it was a crowdfunded. And for us also, that what I'm so proud of is we were part of one of the public-private partnership project in Ethiopia, building some convention center in the country. We were involved in. We did get involved almost about 600 Ethiopian diaspora in raising small equity shares, even that without the technology, but pretty much crowdfunding without it. So it was soliciting, it was passing. It's almost Reg D. So those are the two, in fact, that give us a very good platform and also a very good experience for us to get into the platform and get it scaling. So those are the good examples.
Yeah, fascinating. Has anybody else got an example?
I have one. I mentioned in the beginning a lot of countries I'm connected with, and I come from Ukraine. So my example would be about Ukraine. And basically, again, it's not exactly equity crowdfunding, but with the war which is ongoing in Ukraine, there have been a lot of raising funds through different channels, and many of them are very similar to crowdfunding, just that's mostly donation-based. And huge movement, not just within the country, but also cross-border. In this context, it's very important, because there are a lot of money going in for very different causes, and it's basically exploded in 2022. But moving closer to investment crowdfunding, I personally believe that there will be a huge opportunity to do the same, but also with investment crowdfunding when the time comes, because there will be a lot of projects and investment opportunities which would be viable for investors all over the world, in Europe, but maybe not just in Europe, to invest in and support rebuilding of the country, and also making money out of it, not just supporting as donation, but also getting some return. Right now, it's still probably early days. I know only one example, and it's not exactly a Ukrainian project. It's more German project, which a company which is trying to build co-living and housing in Ukraine, and they raise money through crowdfunding in Europe. And so this is sort of like one early example of how crowdfunding might help in that matter. And personally, I'm following this story and trying to build sort of awareness that this tool might help in the future. But this is more a vision than an example. But I wanted to share with you.
No, that's really interesting. Look,
I'm going to throw one in, but just to tell people to go to lendforgood.io, and you can see the story of Sarvaguna Foods and Kitchen. So they're Nepali based, but they raised $90,000 through our platform to get started, and they've gone broke even in their first year, a mass catering business, and they're doing 10,000 meals a day for schools, employing 120 people, buying from 500 farmers in the Pokhara region of Nepal, and it's like transforming on multiple things with nutritious food and regenerative and sustainable agriculture and jobs and employment. And that's a very small investment, but what it enables in a country like Nepal is significant. And I think that's one of the things about cross-border and borderless is, in a wealthy country like Australia, buying impact in Australia, your impact per dollar is low. It takes a lot of money to create a level of impact. That same dollar being spent just outside of our borders in Indonesia or in Nepal, you can buy a lot more impact with that same dollar, right? And so I think there's a lot of Australians that are on our platform that like that, the ability to have a catalytic outsized impact in different markets that they couldn't have, investing within Australian markets. With $90,000 in Australia, that would disappear very quickly. $90,000 in Nepal, it's seeded a whole business that's employing like hundreds of people and impacting thousands of lives.
Fantastic. I'd encourage everyone to have a look at that. So just take 30 seconds to 45 seconds each, much like the first question, actually. I'd just like to ask one question, and it's kind of it's kind of typical to these questions at the end of a session. But if you could change one thing in the global crowdfunding landscape tomorrow, what would it be? And let's start with Patrice, please.
Yes. Well, if I'm going to look at it from a economic development perspective, and it's how do you redirect? Basically, it's how can I redirect capital towards high potential ventures within underserved regions, and that would be because as we can understand, most crowdfunding activities and projects they're done in the U.S., Europe. Very well-off, affluent countries, and there's a lot of capital going through there. So my if I could have a wave one is how do I gather that capital and transfer it to more less the least developed countries. So because again, in those countries, formal banking systems, credit systems is very hard to get access to capital. And using crowdfunding as an alternative type of financing would be something I'd be very interested in looking looking into.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was really succinct as well. Thank you. Konstantin, one thing you can change.
Yeah, I will say one word, collaboration, because I think there is really a lack of collaboration right now between platforms, between people in the industry. And it is too early to compete, I think, because you need to first grow the market, and then you will have space where you compete. Right now, a lot of platforms look at each other and then say, "Oh yeah, I have some secrets. I don't want to share it with others." This is really not helping.
Great, thank you, Meze.
For me, I know I'm going back to the regulation. I think it would have been really good if I can just get rid of the regulation that just completely separates everybody. I'm not saying that it should be free for all, but at least sensible, where we can make cross-border capital flow seamless. I would make it like, investing in a country in Rwanda from the US should be as easy as investing in the US.
Absolutely.
And while we have all the protections, so somebody being in Africa should be able to have the same capital access as someone being in the US or in France. So that would have been one thing I could do if I had
Absolutely.
the magic.
Thank you. Thank you. And finally, Cameron.
Well, I would have said the same thing. So I'll say something different. If tomorrow large capital allocators like pension funds, VC funds, foundations, DFIs, and the like, that they realized the immense power of investing alongside communities in impact enterprises, and they were figuring out how to back their liquidity into all of our platforms so that we could actually move the trillions of dollars that needs to move to SMEs in emerging markets, that would be gold.
Fantastic. What a great way to finish. And I think I am going to wrap up now. I think I've got about a minute and a half left. So I think it's safe to say we've covered a lot in just over 40 minutes. We've from local opportunities to global regulation, from tech solutions to human trust. A few key takeaways that stood out for me. I think collaboration is clearly important. We've just spoken about that. We need to collaborate in order to compete as an investment class. Trust is key. The platform having the right partners, the story, having the right communication strategy in place is actually fundamental to building that trust, and it's fundamental to the success really of any campaign which is going to be exposed to an international market. So it just remains for me to say a huge thank you to Patrice, to Meze, to Konstantin, to Cameron for sharing your time and insights, and to everybody for joining us for this session. I encourage you to connect with all of the panelists after the session and to keep the conversation going. And that's it from us. Just enjoy the rest of the event. And thank you, Devin, for the opportunity of being able to speak to you.
Well, you've done just a phenomenal job. We've got a couple of minutes. I wonder if you'd indulge me to ask a question or two of you and the group. But as I look at this global crowdfunding ecosystem that's sort of forming, it seems to me that that the use of digital securities could be a way to enhance the global trade, the global issuance of these kinds of things. How do you see the kind of the digital asset and the crowdfunding global community coming together? Do you think that's going to happen?
I can take it. I think the technology side, for sure, of digital asset, and if we talk, I'm not sure if you're talking about tokenization, but probably. And technical side, from technical side, for sure, there are benefits. But for it to work on a global scale, there should be that same collaboration between governments and regulators and other parties, because it's not enough to just move the digital asset from one owner to another. You need to have the underlying legal side, and that's still there, so it's still fragmented. Well, that's my point of view.
I completely agree with Konstantin. Like, I think we it's on our roadmap that we will have digital digital wallets, digital currency, smart contracts, tokenization. It's the only way to do this stuff at scale at a global level in terms of the back end technology. But for it to do what it needs to do, we need to have a jurisdiction where we can be based that will allow us to do that with people everywhere. And there isn't a place that you can do that now. Like the regulatory regime is not where we need it to be to make that possible. And so, I think that's everything we're talking about. Messe saying, let's just get rid of the regulation. Like, we're not saying that, but I think with the digital, one of the biggest concerns to everyone obviously is making sure people pay tax in that. Every nation state wants to make sure they're not missing out on tax, right? So I think there are definitely ways with technology and digital that we can make sure that happens. But we need everyone to collaborate on making sure it happens. Like, we should have a new global treaty on tax, which most governments are running away from because they don't want to do that. They get a lot of opposition from rich people in their country if they try and sign up to those things, right? So there's a whole bunch of challenges around kind of the taxation and jurisdictional elements of it. Technologically, yes, 100%. And it needs to happen for us to do this, for us to do it at scale. And it will work better. You'll get transparency, instantaneous payments, all this stuff. One of the hardest things that we all have to deal with doing global crowdfunding is banks and banking systems. Most of them are not designed for international banking and trade. That is something that is pain in their butt and something that they don't want to do. And so neobanks are coming along that are kicking their ass on that, and that's great. But I think the digital stuff can do it even better and faster. But what we need, and like Andrew was talking in the session before about what's happening in the US, and that's fantastic, but that's the US. Like, that's not giving us a regime where we can do that seamlessly globally tomorrow. And that's kind of what we need really for it to work.
And to add to that, actually, the Global Equity Crowdfunding Alliance, GECA, is the talking shop to discuss those challenges around harmonisation of regulatory frameworks. So I'd encourage anyone to have a look at GECA and get involved if you can.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be a part of this important conversation. I think it is exciting to think about what we can do. And I look at the work that Cam is doing and say, wow, the focus on social impact globally is impressive. And I want to see that kind of work expand. Meseret actively engaged in moving capital into Africa. And there's so much potential in Africa, especially in Ethiopia. What a great place. And so I'm excited to see that happen. Patrice is one of the most resilient people I know. He's got this tremendous operation in Haiti. We'll be talking to Patrice a little later, doing amazing work, saving lives, and is an active angel investor via crowdfunding. We're so grateful for him and his work. And Konstantin, it's just great to have you be a part of this effort and part of this discussion. We thank you. And what you're doing with LenderKit is super valuable. And of course, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to prepare and organize this so well. What a great conversation. We look forward to continuing the discussion with you to see if we can't help you accelerate the global movement toward crowdfunding, especially when it's got some impact.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
Thank you very, very much, all of you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Andy.